The House Chairperson.
Leli lithuba lokuthandaza ngesitu noma ukuzidla. Athokoza ngahlala phansi. Order, honorable members, may I just verify if the Deputy President is on platform? If he is on the platform, he can just open his video so that we verify through that. His camera.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you very much. The Deputy President is ready. I will now invite the Speaker to take the proceedings forward. The Honorable the Speaker.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable members, the only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to the parties for this purpose.
The Speaker.
This was done to participate, to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officers. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to put the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the Deputy President, we will proceed to the next question on the order paper. The first question, Honorable Deputy President.
Can't hear the Speaker.
The first question, Honorable Deputy President, is the question put to you by the Honorable J. Hermans. Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm sure I'm audible, Honorable Speaker.
You are, sir, please.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, government has taken a view that Eskom must be supported to implement a very comprehensive turnaround program, which will ensure that this power utility develops and enhances its requisite institutional capabilities to meet the country's energy needs. Rapid economic growth and recovery will depend mainly on our ability to ensure that the security of energy supply to support industrialization and development, whilst equally ensuring that the livelihood of our people is not undermined through electricity disruptions. Eskom is therefore central to the country's plans of reigniting the economy in the context of the prevailing negative impact of COVID-19. In the main, our support to Eskom, Honorable Speaker, focuses on ensuring that Eskom strengthens its leadership, its governance and accountability systems, addressing debt and liquidity challenges, including the payment of debts owed to Eskom by government entities and municipalities, the implementation of an effective plant maintenance program to minimize energy supply disruptions, accelerating the completion of the new build program that will deliver additional energy capacity, and also fast-tracking the emergency procurement of additional energy generation through the independent power producers. While the road ahead is still long and challenges we face as a nation may be daunting, we are confident, Honorable Speaker, that Eskom is heading in the right direction. With the appointment of the new executive officer and his executive team, the strategic direction of the organization is now strengthened and becoming more and more clear. We can say without any fear of contradiction that there is visible progress in addressing key challenges to ensure that the organization is transformed and put on a new governance and agile operating model. Under the leadership of the new CEO, the reorganization of Eskom along the lines of the new distinct but yet complementary business and operating model has begun with clear completion timelines. In part, the thrust of organizational transformation seeks to achieve significant cost reduction and savings while improving the overall efficiencies across key drivers such as expenditures on coal contracts and compensation of employees. Eskom is reviewing its headcount levels in a way that will balance and match business delivery outcomes, will match the core skills and improved organizational performance. To avoid resource leakages, wastages, and corruption, the leadership of Eskom has focused sharply on strengthening the governance system and internal controls. A number of investigations have been undertaken to ensure that all those involved in fraud and corruption cases are brought to book. The political task team, which consists of members of justice, the Minister of Justice, Minister of Police, are part of the task team, which are following some of the cases that are being reported by Eskom. Currently, there are investigations in progress to detect breaches and fraudulent activities across the value chains that are core to the Eskom operations, where it has been discovered that companies and individuals have been inappropriately and wrongfully paid. Eskom has embarked on a process of recovering these amounts. Alongside this initiative, Eskom is improving its revenue and debt collection measures to fund its operation and ensure that electricity is supplied on a sustainable basis. Rising municipal debt continues to pose a serious risk to Eskom's long-term financial sustainability and contributes significantly to liquidity challenges that are faced by Eskom. The current municipal area debt remains very high and has reached 28 billion as at the 31st March 2020, which is an increase of 8.2 billion over the past 12 months. As a political task team, we have committed to ensuring that we expedite the payment of outstanding debts owed to Eskom, while also directing all national and provincial organs of state to settle outstanding debts with municipalities. More importantly, we have a responsibility to improve the culture of payment for services such as electricity and water by our communities to avoid unnecessary disruptions in the provisions of these services. Honorable Speaker, we want to call on all our communities to pay for electricity so as to enable Eskom and municipalities to provide these services continuously.
If it's like this, you are muted.
With regard, Honorable Speaker,
yes. You see, it's a speaker will
to implement a comprehensive campaign to raise awareness and encourage communities to pay for electricity and other services that they consume. We hope that honorable members of this House, in their respective capacities as public representatives, will also join and aid government's campaign to root out the pervasive culture of non-payment for services. We're also implementing key measures to ensure that Eskom's outstanding debts are paid. Among others, these measures include the establishment of a multidisciplinary revenue committee to resolve the issues of outstanding debts and implementing mechanisms to prevent accumulation of new electricity debts by municipalities and organs of state. Instituting a dispute resolution mechanism by appointing an ombudsman to process and resolve disputes arising from disagreements between parties on amounts of monies that are owed. Ensuring that National Treasury communicate with all municipalities and organs of states owing Eskom, directing them to settle their electricity debts. Supporting Eskom in addressing the problem of illegal connections that contribute to electricity supply disruptions. As part of achieving operating efficiencies and cost reduction, Eskom has embarked on the renegotiation of some of the coal contracts to bring them in line with the value of money principle, achieve optimal pricing, and ensuring that win-win outcomes with affected coal suppliers in the best interest of our country. To consistently achieve acceptable levels of energy availability, a focused maintenance program is critical to avoid electricity supply disruptions, particularly when you are managing a fleet of old and unreliable power plants. We are pleased, Honorable Speaker, that Eskom leadership has put a clear maintenance plan in place to ensure that the energy availability factor is kept at levels that will avoid unexpected electricity supply disruptions. While the system remains very much under pressure, we are confident that Eskom has put in place necessary measures to keep the lights on. The contribution of the new build program to energy availability is critical in the mix of initiatives to ensure energy security. Eskom has to deal with cost overruns and defects affecting Kusile and Mudupi power stations. We are advised by the leadership of Eskom that a great deal of progress has been made in effecting corrective technical modifications that are required in Kusile and Mudupi. Eskom has committed to completing Mudupi and Kusile power stations by the revised dates of 2020, this year, which is Mudupi, and 2023, which is Kusile, respectively. Although the impact of COVID-19 on the potential completion of the new build will contribute additional capacity to our generation capacity. The political task team, Honorable Speaker, has been seized with ensuring that we accelerate the process to provide additional energy capacity through the implementation of the Emergency Energy Procurement Program. Concurrence has been received from the National Energy Regulator of South Africa to the Section 34 determination by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to procure additional 2,000 megawatts as pronounced by the President. The department is also in discussion with the existing independent power producers that are already connecting to the grid to supply available power to Eskom. In the medium to long term, the implementation of the Integrated Resource Plan 2019 will provide additional diverse energy generation options to support
Can somebody help Deputy President to unmute? Deputy President, we have lost you. Now you are back.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As a nation, let us stand firm together, extend our support to the leadership of Eskom as it traverses the challenges of the moment with a view to building a sustainable power utility that must meet the demands of our country and the continent. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The first supplementary is put to you by the Honorable Hermans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy President, government has adopted a correct approach of building a social compact in addressing the socio-economic challenges our country faces. In this context, how will government engage with communities, municipalities, and state institutions to find workable ways of repaying their debt to Eskom? I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In the political task team, Honorable Speaker, we are sitting with the president of SALGA, representing all municipalities. We are sitting with the Minister of Culture, also in a way central to all our municipalities. Now, we have communicated the message that our municipalities must reorganize themselves, start to collect revenue, and settle their debts. But we've established that a lot of amount that is being owed by municipalities stems from national departments and provincial departments. We have then taken a view that all the monies that are owed by national departments must be calculated. All monies that are owed by provincial department must be calculated and be verified whether they are correct, and from there they must be paid. The difficulty which we're still discussing, it's the culture of non-payment from our communities. This is a culture that started long ago when you and me, when all of us were still struggling for our freedom. It is upon all of us now to stand up and say to our people, let's pay for the services that we consume. Because if we don't pay for services that we consume, we destroy the very nature, the very institutions that we should rely upon. So I'm confident that we will be able to reduce the amount of money that is owed to Eskom. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The second supplementary is from the Honorable KG Millian from the Chamber.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy President, when President Ramaphosa appointed you to head up what was then called the Energy War Room in December 2019, at the height of level 6 load shedding, the mandate was, and I quote, to deal with any challenges to our energy supply in the country, end quote, according to the Cabinet minutes of 13 December 2019. Will you admit that the focus has shifted without a new mandate from Cabinet to propping up Eskom at any cost rather than solving our electricity crisis? And if you won't admit that, will you tell us how much new electricity generation capacity has been procured since December 2019 in terms of the emergency procurement announced at that time? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, I must confirm that the mandate of the task team has not changed. A few issues were requested to support Eskom about. One, in the main, is the financial challenges that are faced by Eskom. Secondly, the disruptions, whether you can call it unplanned or planned maintenance that resulted into load shedding. Now, like I said, when the new CEO was appointed, we then saw the direction of the utility changing. We started getting firm reports on maintenance, and we were very happy when he took the platform and say, load shedding is going to happen for the foreseeable future because we are trying to maintain our plans. I think Eskom has done that, and we must give them credit. We must give them credit Secondly, it is quite clear that the amount of energy that we have as a country, it's not enough for the size of our economy. Therefore, we insisted that Eskom must speed up its build program. The build program, in this case, that is left behind, it's Medupi and Kusile. And we're happy to say that according to Eskom's projections, they must finish Medupi this financial year, 2020. All said and done, if things happen according to plan, they'll have to finish. And that will give additional capacity to the grid. Kusile, with all the technical issues, Eskom has tried to get external expertise to come into the country. In the height of COVID-19, we had to get people to come and assist Eskom. That has happened. That is why we are confident that the build program of Eskom is on track. We're quite happy about the progress the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy has made in terms of its application of Section 34 to procure additional 2,000 megawatts. That process, it's happening as we speak. We're still calling for all other independent power producers to step forward if they have surplus energy. The situation of Eskom is gradually stabilizing. Of course, the problems are still huge, but with the current leadership, I'm confident that given time, we'll get out of this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The third supplementary goes to Reverend Mishu. He's in the chamber. Ndate Mishu.
Thank you, Speaker. The Deputy President did well to acknowledge the fact that during the struggle against apartheid, the ANC encouraged citizens not to pay for services in order to collapse the apartheid government. The problem is that after the installation of a democratic government, the ANC did not go back to the same citizens to encourage them to start paying for services, but rather acted like Father Christmas would provide everything for free. The Eskom task team will not be able to resolve the issue of 450 billion rands debt owed by the utility alone. Government must find a way of involving all ANC members to convince residents whom they encouraged not to pay to start paying for services. Honorable Deputy President, rather than relying solely on Eskom task team to do an almost impossible task, have you considered engaging all structures, particularly of the ANC, to go once more in all communities, encouraging them to pay for what they use? And also, would you consider challenging members of this House who go around saying to informal settlement members who are not paying that they have the right not to pay because they've been promised free electricity? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Well, I must say right at the outset that, yes, I accept the fact that when all of us were fighting for our freedom, we advocated that services that we were consuming at that time, we should not pay. That is why I'm standing here today saying to our people, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve then, fighting for our freedom. Now we've got a democratic government in place. It is our duty to pay for services that we consume, be that the electricity or water, any services that we consume as South Africans, we must pay. This is a good culture that we must inculcate. This is a good culture that our young democracy must rest on. Well, we are going to take up this campaign. We think it's achievable. We're going to speak to our people. We're quite aware that the majority of our people are still unemployed. Some are indigent, but we are saying to those that are employed, that are able to pay, they must start paying. Of course, the amount that is owed by Eskom, the 450 billion or so, the biggest amount there is the loan that has been taken by Eskom for a variety of reasons. The amount of money that stems for non-payment of services, you can actually say is the 28 billion from municipalities. Now, in that 28 billion, we include national and provincial departments. I want to assure this House that the next time we speak about this matter, national and provincial departments will be out of this equation because they will settle what they owe to municipalities, and an arrangement will be made that that money be paid to Eskom. So yes, I'm also calling for the House, jointly, collectively, all of us. Eskom is very important, not only to the governing party, but to all of us as a country. If we are really to drive our economic growth, we need a reliable and a strong energy generation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The last supplementary on this question goes to the Honorable Breed.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. In the light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the way our economy has come to a screeching halt, the necessity to stimulate our economy and to promote job opportunities, further taking into account that municipalities need to create a conducive environment with proper service delivery to ensure businesses can thrive and prosper, as the Deputy President has said. What is the rationale to punish such businesses by declining a municipality's application to upgrade its power stations and forcing such municipalities to implement load shedding because of the limitation of supply, even though such municipalities are complying with its payment arrangements and is keeping up to date with its payments? An example of such a municipality, Honourable Deputy President, is the Ngwate local municipality in the Free State that are even switching off hospitals' electricity at this stage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honourable Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Well, it's very important for municipalities to act in a manner that is a bit decisive, because we must stem this tide. But I expect municipalities to be always responsible. In a situation like this, I don't expect municipalities to switch off electricity in places like hospitals. As much as we need this money, all of us, I think we must be considerate of certain areas in our communities that we should, all of us, be taking care of. It's important, I'm sure we are getting to that point where those who are supplying energy will finally switch off if people don't pay. All what we need to do from now is that we must know exactly how much it's owed by who, when, so that if we switch off for the right person, for the amount owed. Even if that amount is in dispute, that person can challenge the municipality, can challenge Eskom. But we can't just negotiate forever. At a certain point, we must insist that people must pay for services. In the task team, we are also considering the introduction of prepaid meters, so that for every service that you consume, you must pay beforehand, so that there's no problem with the service providers that are providing you with the service. There's no problem with people owing debts that they are not settling on time. Going forward, I think we must be a nation that takes responsibility for the growth of its own nation. We must be responsible for every freedom that we have achieved. Comes responsibility. Thanks, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. The second question was put to you by the Honorable Mazoni. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. When the President declared the state of national disaster on the 15th of March 2020, he announced the establishment of a national coronavirus command council tasked in the main with the coordination of government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The contribution of the Deputy President, like any other member of the executive, are made within the context of discussions and debates on agenda matters being considered by both the National Coronavirus Command Council and Cabinet. The decisions arrived at are collective decisions of the executive and not personal viewpoints. The establishment of the National Coronavirus Command Council has not in any shape or form usurped the powers, responsibilities, and functions of any of the three arms of state, including Parliament, in its responsibility of exercising oversight over the executive, as well as facilitating public participation in the legislative process. As for ensuring that members of the executive attend to their parliamentary responsibilities, we have, amongst others, things during this COVID-19 pandemic, been in constant engagement with the executive to ensure that they attend to their parliamentary responsibilities and that they continue to be transparent and fully accountable to Parliament. As a matter of fact, Parliament had, on the 27th of May 2020, held its first second-term question session. Cabinet colleagues under social services and government clusters were requested to avail themselves to respond to questions during this session. They all attended, except one minister who was represented by his deputy due to other pressing commitments. In addition to this, we have written to the executive requesting that they urgently prioritize responding to unanswered written questions within stipulated timeframes, or alternatively give us reasons in writing for their non-compliance and how they intend to address this. The reports we are receiving are now showing that great improvement in turnaround time and responses to outstanding questions that are being submitted. As for possible fast-tracking of any legislation, honorable members will know that we had already begun a process of compiling the 2020 legislative program with new executive bills when the state of national disaster was announced. This process was then halted by the lockdown. However, we have since requested the executive to reprioritize the proposed legislative program to be in line with government's program to address the reality of COVID-19. To this end, Honorable Speaker, ministers have since reprioritized their proposed legislation and the 2020 legislative program with new executive bills that will be submitted for cabinet approvals the end of June. This has already happened. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The Honorable Mazoni.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, may I say it's rather nice to see you. We were getting a bit concerned as to where you were, so it's good to see that you are healthy and with us today. Deputy President, here's the thing. We have a command council, and until very recently, no one really knew who formed part of this command council. So it was a very new entity to Parliament. Now, the problem is no one elected this command council, but Parliament, in actual fact, was elected by the people of South Africa. Now, it cannot be denied that the regulations that have come out, that are devised, as you've told us today, collectively by this command council, have been a bit of a hot mess. And in actual fact, at most times, quite embarrassing for the country. It's also, undeniable that Minister Dlamini Zuma now has an incredible amount of power because she is in fact in charge of the running of this command council, given the fact that she's in charge of the Disaster Management Act. So what we have, Deputy President, is an unelected Prime Minister who's governing over an unelected sub-parliament of ministers, with a Deputy President who's the leader of government business who is somewhat sidelined, and a President who's seemingly powerless. Now, why is Parliament not being used to conduct oversight on this specific command council? Because we have a constitutional mandate to conduct oversight on this specific command council. And then in response to your response, Deputy President, about the fast-tracking of legislation, I must bring it to your attention that I was deeply concerned that the President announced to the Republic of South Africa that Parliament was derelict in its duty by not processing GBV legislation that was before it. We now know, confirmed by the Speaker, that there is no such legislation before Parliament. Are you, as Leader of Government Business, going to give this House the assurance that GBV legislation is going to be fast-tracked as a matter of urgency because women in this country are under siege?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, I must correct one assertion that the Command Council is a substructure of Cabinet. It's a structure that has been formed by Cabinet, and who is sitting there in the Command Council are ministers. The President is chairing the Command Council I sit as Deputy President, and we've got ministers, and we've got net joints, and that's it. Now, this structure is processing on a daily basis the impact, looking at the spread of this virus, meet and recommend certain decisions to Cabinet. So that means Cabinet is still in charge. So Cabinet is accountable in terms of its own workings. As members of Cabinet, we're accountable to Parliament in terms of our workings, what we do on a daily basis. We answer questions to yourself. We have not abdicated that responsibility. And it will be incorrect to say, honorable member, that Minister Dlamini Zuma is now Prime Minister. It's because of her role as Minister of COGTA, and COGTA is the one that administers the act under which we have declared our national disaster. And therefore, the minister has been given the role, together with other ministers, to sit down and work out on regulations. Every time we make a movement from one level of our disaster management to another level, whether we are easing, whether we are locking down, all ministers will go and explain exactly the intention, the process. So Minister Dlamini Zuma is just doing her job like any other minister. And we don't take it that the president is no longer president. The president is still the president and is commanding the command council, and is also commanding Cabinet. So nothing has gone wrong. Probably there was a period of lull when the lockdown was announced. Honorable Mazoni, I think that was the time where you missed me because we were all locked down. For a month, we could not see each other. I could not see you. I missed you too. But the condition at that time dictated that we stay at home. But after easing to level 4, we started easing up, we started moving around, and I'm sure down the line, we're going to see things improving. What is important about this virus, which we must communicate, is that the benefits of a lockdown, we think we've benefited and it's over. Now we are going to rely on the behavior of individuals. Our people must wear the mask. Our people must observe the necessary social distance. Our people must wash hands. In that way, we'll be preparing ourselves to coexist with the virus. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The second supplementary question is put to you by the Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for your response. Now, Honorable Deputy President, one of the roles of being leader of government business is, as you said, to ensure that cabinet members attend to their parliamentary responsibilities. You referred to the 2 question sessions that we had in the House, but not one member of the executive appeared physically in the House. Now, Honourable Deputy President, surely some members of the executive have also got to support Parliament in this regard, because Parliament has adopted a hybrid system and up to 100 members of Parliament can come into the House. The second question will arise from the unanswered questions. While you say that there's been progress, Honourable Deputy President, there are still 172 unanswered written questions, some of them from 13th of February this year. So my question is, will you crack the whip as leader of the government business on the members of the executive that are not doing their work? Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, sir. The Honourable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Yes, of course, I will follow up on the 172 questions that are outstanding. Just this yesterday, we have indicated to members of the executive, those that are still having questions that are outstanding, and we're going to insist on that. It's very difficult to really manage the business of the executive and the business of Parliament. I find it very difficult every time there is a friction, there is a clash. There's a moment when members of the executive must be in Parliament and they've got meetings of the executive. For instance, of late, we've got an additional meeting that has been included, which is a standing meeting of the Command Council that takes place on a Tuesday. So a Tuesday is now off. Then on a Wednesday, normally it's cabinet. 1 week, it's cabinet committees. So members of the executive have got a very tight space. Now, we are going to sit down with members of the programming committee in Parliament so that we address this question. Allow members of the executive to be effective where they are deployed, where they must be doing their work, but also allow them to find time and do work in Parliament. We are not saying they must run away from their responsibility, but they can't be always on the road with their bags moving around up and down. They must find time to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The third supplementary question will be put by the Honourable Njayisa. The Honourable Njayisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Madam Speaker. Deputy President, you seem to be excelling in answering questions today. Not that you have not been excelling before.
He always is. Deputy President.
You are protected, Honourable Njayisa. Please put your question.
I just want to base my question on two.
Point of order, Speaker.
Honourable members, let Honourable Njayisa put his question.
Point of order, Speaker.
There is a point of order, Honourable Thring.
Speaker, we've had over the last few sessions of Parliament a number of interruptions by Minister Zulu, who has not been reprimanded. And I know that we all apply the rules of Parliament, and those particular rules indicate that we have to keep our mics muted. But the Honourable Minister continually interrupts without being reprimanded.
This is Parliament. Where you think I am? I'm in Parliament.
Honourable Zulu, you will not interact when the member is still on the floor. Please continue, Honourable Thring.
She has just proved my point, Speaker. And I think that it is time that Honourable Zulu be reprimanded and told, like every other member of Parliament, to mute a mic when other members of Parliament are speaking. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. In fact, just to correct you, Honourable Thring, Honourable Zulu has been called to order several times by myself on this platform. Honourable members will remember that we actually came up with a set of rules for the virtual sitting. When we are all in the house, it is easy for us to interject and to do what is parliamentary. On the virtual platform, it becomes difficult because then, as your mic goes on, you drown the person who is on the floor. And that is why we have been insisting, members, that you mute your mic, you allow the person on the floor to finish. Now, can we do that? And now, can we go back to you, Honorable Njaisa? You are on the floor. And because you were interrupted, you will have to start your supplementary time all over again. Honorable Njaisa,
thank you
please
very much.
put your supplementary.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Comparing these two platforms, virtual and being in the chamber, I just want to check with you, Deputy President, that do you think these ministers, in terms of answering questions or coming to Parliament, have been doing well before? Because to me, it seems now being on virtual, so they are attending their businesses and answering these questions. But I'm nursing fears that when getting to level 1, things becoming normal. Do you think now they will be in a position to come back? Perhaps they will be spoiled now by this being in virtual and not come to Parliament. So what is your take there? And if you compare, or perhaps now you compare, then you rate so the attendance of them on virtual and the attendance of them being in chamber before. So how can you rate their attendance? Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Ndati Njaisa. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think it will be best for all of us, Honorable Speaker, to be in the chamber, to minimize disruptions and all that. And I'm sure we are not in the chamber because of a situation that we understand. Maybe in future we can try that a few of those of us that must answer questions must come down to Parliament. But we should be mindful that even transport, logistics, and all those things are still not easily practical. So I suggest that let us move with the adjustments that are before us. If we can respect this virtual system, I heard the President saying next time he answers questions, he suggests he will go to Parliament. Maybe because our sessions tend to be long, so that we avoid disruptions on a virtual system. At least it's better that if the one who's answering questions is in the House, that will minimize some disruptions. But we're still keeping to the number of less than 50. That is why we still have that number in the chamber. So as long as we keep to that number, I think we're still adhering to the regulations. But so far, so good. I think, Madam Speaker, the system it's normalizing, and members are getting used to the system. I think we'll overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The last supplementary goes to the Honorable Mente. The Honorable Mente.
Speaker, I will take the supplementary question.
Please proceed, Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, as the leader of government business, are you not concerned with the length of time it takes the President of the country to sign bills processed by Parliament into law? If you are, what conversations have you had with him to ensure that he signs the bills without extensive delays? More specifically, have you engaged him on his recent misguided decision to send back the Performance Amendment Bill and the Public Investment Amendment Bill that has been sitting in his desk for over a year? What are his reasons for denying artists legislative mechanisms through which their rights could be protected? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. Well, we may be worried about the time left that the President takes to sign bills into acts. To me, it's a necessary step. It's a necessary step because the President must satisfy himself. That is the last signature on the act. Other than that, the act will be dismissed by a constitutional court, which will go back straight into where it started. Two ways. It's either you get this act to be dismissed by a constitutional court and you are given a timeline on when to amend this act. Now, already that would emanate from a court case, and then you are required to correct the situation within a certain stipulated timeline. We have got so many bills that have been referred back by our constitutional court, which is not a good thing for us. Now, the President has surrounded himself with a team that will help him reprocess. When you see the President sending a bill back, they've scrutinized the bill, they've checked everything, and they can realize that this will not pass the constitutional line. And therefore, those things must be identified by the President, unlike just appending a signature. With all the support he has, he should assist Parliament to say, no, I don't agree with this and this and this and this, as advised by my legal team. And probably that can be corrected. But what we're encouraging is that the President must apply his mind in whatever he puts his signature on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. We proceed to question number 3. Question number 3 was put to you by the Honorable Shibambu. My instruction is that the Honorable Ndlozi will take care of the question. The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We can confirm, Honorable Speaker, that we have, through the Minister of Public Enterprises as a shareholder representative, have had sight of the contents of the internal report of Eskom into the investigation of allegations against the Chief Operating Officer. As a point of departure, Honorable Speaker, we must state the importance of good corporate governance in our state-owned enterprises, especially those as strategic to our country as Eskom. In an environment of prevailing financial challenges faced by Eskom, our public should at all times have confidence in how this power utility is being managed. That is why we have appointed the board and we have put in place a shareholders compact to guide our relationship, including setting parameters on the responsibilities, duties, and rights of shareholders, directors, and executives. At all times, we look to the board to ensure that the affairs of the power utility are well managed, including dealing with allegations of corruption, abuse of power, dishonesty, and conflict of interest, whatever such may arise. Notwithstanding the fact that we have no basis to doubt the fairness and the integrity of the investigation process as conducted against the COO. We call on the board to ensure that the recommendations are fully implemented. We find comfort in the commitment expressed by the CEO that they will act should new evidence arise. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The Honourable Ndlozi. The Honourable Ndlozi. Honourable Mkalipi, can you help?
Give me some few minutes, Speaker.
That's difficult. That's difficult, Sisi, because the supplementary must go to the party first.
Okay, Speaker, let me try and help.
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy President, Jan Obenholzer, as the COO, presided over illegal attempt to steal more than 40 million from Eskom to pay avenge. Zondo Commission prevented the attempt to loot from Eskom and ordered investigations. Former chairperson, CEO and supplier Jabu Mabuza resigned for misleading the country about load shedding. Koko Machele and Anil Singh were removed from Eskom for allegations of corruption even before investigation. Are people whose appointment were presided over by Pravin Gordhan not subjected to the same rules, even when there is evidence of corruption and they are allowed to investigate themselves? Thank you, Speaker.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the question, Honourable Kalipi. Now, we have got a board that we have appointed in Eskom, and we have got a CEO. So that structure is fully fleshed. And we've got the minister who's a shareholder. Most of the time as government, we have been condemned that we are seen to be interfering in the running of all these SOCs. Now, some they call it politically connected people were deployed and all that. All sorts of things were said. I think we must try very hard to give those people that we have appointed, the board and the leadership there, to lead those utilities. Now, for the sake of Honourable Mkalipi is concerned, I think you must find solace in the fact that this report that we're talking about will find its way into Parliament. One day, you will sit and discuss this report. This report, I'm reliably informed that the Minister of Public Enterprise will present it to the Public Accounts Committee. Now, that's where members of Parliament will be able to enter the discussion, but in this way, us discussing a report that is kept by the board, a report that is being challenged by other people, I think it will be incorrect. A time will come where all of us will be afforded the opportunity to discuss the report as Parliament. We can even request the report as Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The third supplementary question, I'm advised, goes to the Honorable Mazoni.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you, Deputy President. Deputy President, I'm very pleased to hear that these investigations have been ongoing. And I must say that one of the proudest things in my life was that I formed part of Team South Africa, the team that uncovered the corruption that was going on in Eskom. And at the time, criminal charges were laid against Brian Malefi, Benin Gubani, Anoj Singh, Machele Koko, and this is just to name a few. But one of the things, Deputy President, that happened was that committee brought to Parliament a report that actually instructed Parliament to show its teeth. And in doing so, Parliament was also to lay charges and conduct a series of investigations as to why certain people hadn't appeared before the committee, and also given the evidence before us that criminal charges had to be laid. So may I ask you, Deputy President, as leader of government business, do you know how far these charges are? And do you have an intent to actually fulfill the mandate that Team South Africa gave Parliament, which is to make sure that the full might of the law is thrown at those who were the architects of state capture?
The Honourable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The question of fraud and corruption, it's a permanent agenda item in our task team meetings. And I must say that there's a list of more than 600 cases of fraud and corruption that are being followed, that are on our radar screen as the task team. Now, these 600 and odd cases, they are in their different phases of investigation. And I'm sure that information, when Eskom is called to come and meet Parliament, they can always request those cases, but the best thing to do is to allow the qualified law enforcement agencies to pursue these cases. Otherwise, the more we talk about these cases in the open there and there, we might be damaging the prospects of full prosecution. So I suggest that whoever has got information about anyone should approach the leadership of Eskom. If you are not happy about the leadership of Eskom, you can approach the law enforcement agencies so that they can investigate those matters. But I'm sure the minister will also favor Parliament with a list of all the fraud and corruption cases that we're dealing with that are on our agenda in the task team, so that members of Parliament can be aware that Eskom, the leadership of Eskom, is not just sitting on their laurels. They are pursuing cases where they can reclaim some of their money. They are working together with law enforcement agencies So yes, I'm quite satisfied with the progress that they are making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The third supplementary question comes to you from the Honorable M. Shengwa in the House.
Thank you very much.
The Honorable Shengwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, I can confirm that we want that report and the Minister is committed to have it sent to us by tomorrow, so we will be interrogating it. But let's get real, Deputy President. The investigation was completed in 11 working days on such grave allegations against the COO. So assuming that we accept that to be a legitimate process, and the operative word there is assuming, why is it taking so long then for Eskom to complete all other investigations if it has got this kind of efficiency in dealing with matters? Because it calls into question the speed upon which we are moving on some matters against other matters. So are you satisfied about the credibility of the pace in which Eskom is taking to fulfill its investigation responsibilities as part of consequence management? Because then the 600 cases that you speak about should have been finalized by now if this investigation took 11 working days. Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Shengwa is asking very important questions, but probably to a wrong person, because I am not Eskom, but let me try and answer some of your concerns. I think it was very important for Eskom to respond promptly in this case because one of their top managers was being accused of corruption and fraud. That would have drowned the entire leadership. That needed Eskom to act decisively so that if that allegation is true, it should be ascertained it's true. If it's not true, the same should be said. Now, whether Eskom does have this kind of capacity in all the cases that they are before them to process them with the necessary speed, I think that you'll be able to ascertain yourself when you are looking at the number of cases, the list of cases that are there, and the amount of money that Eskom would spend in trying to follow up these cases, because in this case alone, a senior advocate was appointed externally to come and investigate. From where we're standing as government, I don't think we are suspecting anything sinister, not unless there's something that leads us to that which we can call it's sinister. But from where I'm sitting, I should not really go around casting aspersions to this report. I'm happy that public accounts will have an opportunity to sit and look at the report, probably satisfy yourself about the process itself, whether the product is genuine or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Your last supplementary on this question comes to you from the Honorable Janji. He is in the House. The Honorable Janji.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, as you sign off on this question, can you share with the House and the nation the general progress being made in the new roadmap of Eskom, including the success of the anti-corruption drive? Ndacela ke unabe utyatyadule uthethe noMzantsi
I
Afrika.
would request that you dwell and give us all the details and speak to the
Thank
South
you.
African.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I can say without any doubt, Honourable Speaker, that the Eskom that we're talking about today, it's a different Eskom that has taken it upon itself to revive itself. We must commend that attitude, the change of attitude in the leadership, and that should happen to all our power stations. I'm happy with the program that Eskom is following without failure of maintenance of our power stations. Yes, we agree our power stations are old, but they're doing a wonderful job in order to keep the lights on. When it comes to fraud and corruption, we want to request communities, especially in and around those communities where you find these power stations, or anyone who has got information, to work together with law enforcement agencies, to work together with Eskom, so that we can speed up these cases that are before us and close them. It's very important that we should close this past and open a new chapter. I am confident that the fraud and corruption is being rooted out in this institution. Whether this leadership is going to succeed, it will depend whether they will have or they have the staying power to proceed, even if it's difficult. I'm also happy with all the efforts by the leadership to cut costs, to save money. I'm also opening my eyes very wide. I want to see how are we losing money here, because from time to time, government is expected to bail out Eskom, and now I can assure you, I'm just one eye close to where this money is being spent. All what I've seen is that there is an attempt by the leadership of Eskom to save money. And we want to see that happening, but all what we need to do as the task team is to assist that leadership to ensure that municipalities do pay, provincial departments and national departments do pay. We need to assist Eskom to complete its build program. That will take us closer to a stable solution where we've got a reliable supply of energy. So things are not yet good, but it looks like we're on a sustainable path. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Deputy President, we are now proceeding to question number 4. It was put to you by the Honorable Masiko. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The She Conquers campaign for adolescent girls and young women was born out the vulnerabilities of adolescent girls and young women in experiencing violence and contracting HIV and AIDS. The campaign core package of interventions addresses the biomedical, socio-behavioral, and structural factors that contributes to gender-based violence. In the main, the campaign was established to decrease new infections in girls and young women, decrease teenage pregnancies, increase the retention of adolescent girls in schools until matric, decrease sexual and gender-based violence amongst adolescent girls and young women, and increase economic empowerment opportunities for young people, particularly young women. The target of the campaign was to reduce sexual and gender-based violence that is experienced by adolescent girls and young women by almost 10% over 3 years. Although the term campaign suggests a limited and a time-bound effort, the project goals require and deserve a longer-term footing and even wider application so that we can appreciate the impact. The campaign has, since its launch in June 2016, had more than 90,000 adolescent girls and young women that have received post-violence care, and nearly 19,000 young boys and girls have participated in violence preventing programs in the 22 priority sub-districts. Under the umbrella of the campaign, the South African National AIDS Council Social and Structural Technical Task Team provided substantial written inputs into the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence, with a specific focus on the intersections of HIV and gender-based violence. The National Youth HIV Prevention Technical Working Group developed a standardized HIV prevention risk assessment tool, which included gender-based violence screening questions, helplines, and referral tools. The gender-based violence prevention services that educate and empower adolescent girls and young women on safety and health include interventions that are community-based, multi-sessions, delivered through contact sessions in schools, and community engagement. These sessions addresses bullying and links to gender-based violence, gender dynamics, power and violence, social norm change, gender equality, dealing with violent situation, avoiding risk, abuse, and sexual violence. In the first analysis, Honorable Speaker, the She Conquers campaign is focused on investing in institutional capacity, strengthening our implementing partners, and striving to ensure that campaign agents, youth ambassadors, youth connectors, and groundbreakers, including civil society and volunteers, implement their programs at grassroots level. In this instance, multimedia campaigns were implemented to intensify efforts in raising awareness of the child protection risk of lockdown, including sexual and gender-based violence, as well as providing targeted support through remote case management and physical visits to vulnerable households. With the outbreak of COVID-19, the campaign continues to work with communities traditional and religious leaders to avoid transmission of coronavirus infections and to provide training to those well-placed to care for vulnerable adolescent girls and young women. During the lockdown alert level 5 and 4, community gender-based violence prevention services that educate and empower adolescent girls and young women were not available due to lockdown regulations and restrictions. However, during the same period, biomedical and psychosocial services were available and continue to be available during lockdown alert level 3. Staff that is providing trauma containment and immediate health support continue to work as essential staff, and so did linkage officers who provided virtual follow-up and psychosocial support services to clients. Honorable Speaker, it is now evident that COVID-19 and the lockdown has brought along an increase in cases of gender-based violence. Empirical research and data trends have shown that adolescent girls and young women face enormous hurdles that impact on the quality of their life in various ways, including adverse effects on their education, on their personal safety, on their rights over their bodies, on their health, on their peer support, social connection, and their economic prospects. The need for the She Conquers campaign is more important during this time and gives us an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and to adopt a different approach in uprooting this social cancer from our society. If anything else, the campaign for the empowerment of adolescent girls and young women raises sharply the need to concentrate on the family as an important unit for the regeneration of the new society we envisaged in our country's constitution. Honorable Speaker, the recent incidents of gender-based violence perpetrated by men continue to undermine our national commitments towards the protection of the rights of women. These incidents negate the noble objective of our social compact that was forged through the 2018 Declaration of Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Summit that was led by the President. Among other key focus areas, the declaration calls for leadership across all segments of South African society, including political, government, business, and community leaders to take collective responsibility and accountability for responding to the scourge of gender-based violence and to actively play a role in supporting the cause of eradicating gender-based violence and femicide. It is a call for collective action and partnership across all sectors of society. On our part as government, we are committed to providing the necessary leadership required to galvanize society towards a unified vision, a unified purpose, and a broad-based implementation program aimed at eradicating the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. This includes the process of setting up appropriate institutions capacities and resources to ensure that as a nation we respond decisively to the challenges of gender-based violence and femicide. Earlier in the year, Cabinet approved the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide National Strategic Plan and the establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. The National Council will be an inclusive multi-stakeholder body tasked with leading and coordinating the implementation of the National Strategic Plan. Cabinet also approved the setting up of an interministerial committee on gender-based violence and femicide, which will play a key facilitation and political liaison role in the National Council processes and ensure the effective implementation of priority programs. The Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities is in the process of consultation with civil society formations to engage and forge a roadmap for the establishment of the National Council, notwithstanding the need for a broad and intensive consultation. We are confident that these processes will be expedited within the framework of deadlines agreed by all parties. For us, the time for talk on issues of gender-based violence is over, and time is of essence. We need to act and act now. In pursuit of our social compact, commitments to end gender-based violence and femicide, government is progressing on the implementation of some of these key measures. These measures include ensuring that legislative amendments, such as minimum sentencing in cases of gender-based violence, bail conditions for suspects, and gender protection for women who are victims of intimate partner violence, the draft amendment National Policy Framework on the management of sexual offences matters, which has been developed and aligned with the Presidential Declaration Against GBV F 2019. Cabinet approval of the GBV policy framework in post-school education and training system in order to respond to increased number of GBV-related cases at institutions of higher learning, an important step in the right direction during this Youth Month. There is no doubt that more work lies ahead. Collectively, we can make a difference to the lives of all South African women so that they too can enjoy freedoms and liberties with no fear of being raped and murdered by men, unless as a society we fight this scourge with the same vigor that we fought the oppressive system of apartheid. The freedoms we have envisaged at the dawn of our democracy will remain elusive. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy President. The first supplementary to you goes to the Honorable Masiku. The Honorable Masiku.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for the response. Deputy President, with regards to gender-based violence and femicide, and the President declaring gender-based violence as Africa's second pandemic, reference to the Deputy President's responsibilities as leader of the South African AIDS Council and to this She Conquers campaign, What similar campaign does the Council hold to include young boys and men between the ages of 15 and 35 years, as many perpetrators of violence are young men and boys in the above age group? Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honourable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Yes, I think working with social development in the South African National AIDS Council, we have developed such programs that are specifically looking at young girls. We have gone beyond looking at girls. We're looking at young men. I remember attending a boys' parliament organized by the Department of Social Development talking about these gender issues. I'm quite impressed about the work that is done by social development, and I'm happy that this is going to be reinforced by the IMC that is going to be led by the Minister of Women, that is going to be solely focused on gender-based violence. And that IMC, which would culminate into a platform like the Council, where all the role players, where civil society, women themselves, business and government can work together, design programs that would address this scourge. And I must say, Honourable Speaker, this is a very challenging problem that is before us. If we are to succeed as a country, this is just but one test that we must pass. I don't see a society that deserves to be called a society that kills its children and that kills its women. So, as a South African society, I think we must correct this one aspect about us, unless people outside are going to misunderstand this society. So we've got a duty, all of us, to stand up. We are calling everyone, let us not leave this matter to women. Let us not leave this matter to girl children. Let us not leave this matter to boys, to men. We must make it a collective responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. The second supplementary question will be taken by the Honourable Thrim through the virtual platform. Honourable Thrim, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Deputy President, your position as the leader of the National AIDS Council carries with it a weighty responsibility. On the one hand, we have 240,000 new infections per annum and 71,000 deaths in South Africa due to AIDS-related illnesses, while on the other hand, we now have the effect of COVID-19 on those already infected with HIV, particularly on young girls, women, and the vulnerable among us. Now, Deputy President, it has been widely reported that the new COVID-19 trials are to include those infected with HIV. Can you inform this House of the empirical process involved in the conducting of these trials, such as whether it will involve double-blind tests and whether the vaccines contain human fetal or animal DNA, and or aluminium or mercury elements, as allegedly found in some vaccines produced by Big Pharma and the Gates Foundation, where Africans and Indians were used as experimental guinea pigs? Surely, Deputy President, she and all lives matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy President. As I return you to the capable hands of the House Chairperson Boroto.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the journey, for taking me along up to this far, Honorable Speaker. Well, I must say our journey as we're battling with HIV and AIDS is known to everyone in the country. We have gone through a period where we were denialists to a point where we confronted the pandemic. By that time, a lot of damage has happened. I'm happy to say, as a country, we are now confronting HIV and AIDS head-on. Our people are testing, and our people are taking drugs. Of course, we're still aware that there's a missing number out there that is not in our system, that is been infected. So we are going to continue, given time, to go behind those that are still missing there. We know we've got HIV cases that are missing, they're out there. We know we've got TB cases that are missing, they're out there. Probably what has preoccupied our mind currently is the coronavirus. Now, the relationship between the two pandemics, all what we know is that for those that have got comorbidities, they're easily affected by the coronavirus. Well, scientists can attest to that, because we are told that HIV and AIDS affect your immune system, and all those that their immune system is down and weak can easily be affected by the coronavirus. As much as we are trying to live along with the coronavirus, we are trying to wear our mask, we are trying to observe a social distance, we are trying to clean our hands, wash our hands. As long as there is no vaccine on the table, we'll have to find ways and means to live with the virus. And we must keep safe. Fortunately, as a country, we have not gone down in terms of our stock level, in terms of all the other diseases. With respect to HIV and AIDS, I think you have got our stock levels in terms of ARVs, they are at an acceptable level. So we're quite happy that all our people affected by HIV and AIDS are still in a position to receive their treatment, as much as we are overburdened by the coronavirus. So we are handling all these challenges together. The main important problem that is before us is the gender-based violence that has shown some signs of increasing during this lockdown period. Very worrying. So there are efforts in the office of the presidency to set up structures that would respond to this scourge. money has been set aside to respond to the scourge of gender-based violence. Still, in the South African National AIDS Council, it is still our responsibility to deal with young girls, young boys. Also, as South Africans, it is our collective responsibility not to fold our hands, but to do something to change, to facilitate change in the culture and in the way we do things as a society. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you,
Honorable,
the Deputy President. The third follow-up
Point of order.
question. Who's
Point of order, Chair. It's Honorable
Three, yes. There's a point of order.
Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, my point of order is this. I feel that the Deputy President hasn't answered my question. My question had reference to the empirical process with regards to the testing, particularly those HIV and who have COVID-19, and whether it involved a double-blind test and the contents also of the vaccine. I know that you're going to say, if I'm not happy, I need to follow it up. And so, Chair, this is what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Thank you for saying what you said at the end. You know what to do. The Deputy President, the next question is Honorable Kharube. Honorable Kharube, please continue.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Deputy President, in 2018, the President launched the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. In it are action steps which need to be taken by the executive, including the allocation of funds towards GBV and NGOs in the space. Judging by the emergency budget that was tabled by the Finance Minister yesterday, this issue seems to have taken a backseat once again. However, what is worse, there seems to be evading of accountability by this government. The President told the nation a couple of weeks ago that Parliament will need to expedite the processing of legislation that deals with GBV. There is no such legislation before this House. The Cabinet is meant to lead the charge in introducing such bills. It has not done so. Will you concede that the President misled the nation by saying this? And what will you, as the link between the executive and Parliament, do about it?
The Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I think we should accept that the President gave an instruction to all of us that we should prioritize legislation that will address gender-based violence. And I'm sure it is my responsibility as leader of government business with ministers to coordinate that and present such bill to Parliament. I think that is how we should respond to the instruction by President. I don't think the President has misled anyone. The President was giving a direction on how things should unfold. Maybe some of us were sleeping on the job, and we are going to follow up on this legislation and make it a point that the intention of the President are realized. So in a very short space of time, we are going to bring those bills that looks at how best we curb gender-based violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honorable Deputy President. The last follow-up question will come from Honorable Yako. Honorable Yako. Honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ma.
Can you hear me?
Continue? Yes, you can continue.
I start the video because the host has blocked me from starting the video, but I will pose the question anyway. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Deputy President, the violence against women is endemic in this country. and it has been with us for a while. Okay, let me start my video. And it has been with us for a while. The problem is not women. It is men who feel entitled to violate women's bodies and to murder them, knowing full well that there are minimal charges of them getting caught by the police. So despite this being a social problem, it is aggravated by poor law enforcement. So why has the South African Police Department been unable to be responsive to the levels of violence directed at women? And what needs to be done to ensure that SAPS is equal to the task at hand? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think we appreciate the fact that all of us are looking at the police to help us. But I think we should agree that we can't have every policeman for every individual in the country. And you'll agree with me that some of this gender-based violence happenings are happening between people who love one another. And they happen in areas where police cannot suspect anything. This is the problem with this gender-based violence, that we've got people that who claim they love one another, and all of a sudden the woman is being killed. There is something wrong about the way we have been socialized, the way we grew up as men, as boys. There's something drastically wrong. We can blame police, we can blame so-and-so, we can blame so-and-so, but I said as family, we must take responsibility how we socialize our children. Of course, we are going to do all what we can do, implement all the programs to try and mitigate the impact. But it is a societal problem. The societal problem which involves the way we mold and shape our offspring, the way we mold and shape our young ones. We must deal with that. Of course, for now, as a mitigating factor, we'll try this and this and this, but we'll revert back to the family as a unit that we must shape and mold the future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Madam,
Thank
I have a point of order.
What's your point of order, Honorable Yaku?
My point of order is that the Deputy President is not answering my question with regards to cases that have gone to SAPS that have not been taken up by the police, where women who are battered and go to the police station are not taken seriously by the police. What is he doing about that? We're not asking about the family structure. We're not asking about a social construct. We're talking about women who actually
Honorable Yaku, you have made your point.
Thank you.
Honorable Yaku, you have made your point. I can hear you. The Deputy President, do you want to have a take on it, or should we continue?
Yes,
take it, Honorable Chair.
We have to take on it because it's a serious matter where people go to the police station to come and report a case and they are not taken serious. I'll be happy to be cited about these cases so that if we can be of assistance, we can. And see that those cases are finally reported and the victims finally find their day in court, one day. So our office is open. Honorable Member, I want the list of all these cases We'll give it to the Minister of Justice, we'll give it to the Minister of Police, because I think all of us must join hands and fight this cage.
It is a joke. You are weak. You are weak.
What's happening now?
There's nothing there.
Honorable members on virtual platform. Honorable Ntlangwini, Honorable Langa, please mute your gadgets.
Chair of Chairs, can I
Thank
raise
you.
a point of order?
Honorable
Chair of the House.
Papo, what's your point of order?
When you are in the House, you can't open your mic and heckle. You can heckle off the mic. Now, even on virtual, you can't open a mic and heckle. Now, there are members who just did that. And I'm just saying on record, this is a problem because the speaker earlier condemned that behavior. And these members are continuing as if on virtual that is allowed. Even in the House, it's not allowed to open your mic and heckle.
Thank you very much. I think the speaker has addressed this point, and please, I plead with you, members on virtual platform. That is not the way to go. Thank you very much. As we continue, the next question on Honorable Deputy President is question number 5, asked by the Honorable Ngwezi. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Under the leadership of the President, social partners from government, business, labor, and community constituencies are working together towards finding lasting solutions to economic, labor, and development issues that are facing our country. This, Honorable Chairperson, is in line with the dictates of our NDP, which advocates for strong leadership throughout society to work together in crafting solutions for challenges that our country faces. The parties in the National Economic Development and Labor Council, as one of the vehicles that exercises this principle of active citizenry, have initiated efforts towards resolving the ongoing electricity supply challenges. We're encouraged by the acknowledgement of all parties at NEDLEC that the culture of non-payment for services rendered is not helping the situation, neither the country. To this end, social partners have developed a framework agreement for a social compact on supporting Eskom for an inclusive economic growth, supported by an implementation plan which provides practical expressions to the social compact. This draft social compact will be presented to the Presidential Working Committee on the Job Summit in July this year for final approval and sign-off. Through the compact, progressive steps have been suggested, such as each constituency identify commitments and sacrifices that will be made towards contributing to resolving the energy challenges, addressing human capital issues, and promoting labor stability while enabling an efficient and productive Eskom that plays its developmental role. This includes enabling increased access and affordable prices to communities and allows industries to support job creation and inclusive economic growth. Over and above the partners at NEDLEC, it is incumbent on all South Africans to champion development efforts in their spaces wherever they are. Through the Eskom task team, various strategic role players are put together with an aim of developing a comprehensive approach and coordination of efforts to ensure that the power utility is supported in the implementation of its turnaround plan. We are pleased to announce that there is a noticeable and improved coordination at government level with Eskom and SALGA in developing creative strategies to increase optimal performance of the utility whilst ensuring security of energy. To this end, SALGA has mandated municipalities to embark on a rigorous debt collection and restructuring process in an effort to recover debt owed to them and to curb escalating Eskom and water board's debt. According to Eskom, the total municipal area debt has continued to escalate to unacceptable high levels of 28 billion at the end of March, which represents an 8.2 billion increase. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs is in discussion with relevant government departments to embark on a campaign to enhance the culture of payment for municipalities. The objective of this campaign is to educate consumers about the benefit of paying for municipal services and to instill a culture of payment for services. All these efforts, Honorable Chair, are aimed at enabling municipalities to collect the required revenue in order to meet their obligation. As far as possible, we should all ensure that we resolve challenges linked to social development and economic growth through taking initiative towards making our democracy work. With democracy comes responsibility. It is in this spirit that we continue to call upon consumers to embrace the user pay principle to ensure that access to basic services such as electricity is on a sustained basis. Similarly, we also call upon all government departments to pay, and municipalities to pay, to ensure that they meet their obligations on time, especially those obligations that relate to Eskom. We want to reiterate our call for accounting officers to settle all contractual obligations and pay all monies owed, including intergovernmental claims, within 30 days of the submission of an invoice or on a specific period agreed with creditors or suppliers. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Sithokoze mhlonishwa sekela lika Mongameli. Honorable Hlengwa will take charge of the question as asked by Honorable Ngwezi. Honorable Hlengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Mr. Deputy President, we have heard all these things in this House before and in various committees of Parliament, but in spite of us hearing it, as you correctly point out, Eskom debt by municipalities continues to escalate as it stands at now 28 billion rands at the end of 31 March 2020. So we've been down this road before and we've heard all these noble plans. But where it has become a problem, Deputy President, is the fact that nobody in the executive is prepared to account or take responsibility or ownership of this crisis, as you are well aware, and the correspondence between myself and yourself. So now that the matter is squarely on your table, can you confirm to this House that you are prepared to take responsibility and accountability to ensure that the programs that you have set out now will actually be realized, so that when Parliament wants to hold people accountable, there will be somebody who will be seated in the hot seat. Secondly, Deputy President, you speak about the culture of payment. At some point, Eskom was rolling out prepaid meters, which was an intervention to help under the circumstances. That has stopped. So what will you be doing to ensure that it becomes part and parcel of the mix of options available to citizens in actually as they want to have their electricity? Because some people are having the electricity cut off as we speak now during these very difficult times of COVID, because municipalities are not servicing their debt. So I hope, Deputy President, that you can confirm now that if we want to talk to somebody, it will be yourself. Over the past 3 years, we have been chased from pillar to post as the executive bluntly refuses to actually take ownership and responsibility of this problem, which continues to escalate on your watch. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind all of us before the Deputy President responds about Rule 142, number 7. You cannot ask more than one question. The Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Thanks to Honorable Shengwa. You're correct that in several occasions you tried to reach my office. And I must say and thank Public Accounts for the efforts that you and the committee have put on this matter of Eskom and the debt that is owed to Eskom. Well, I must clear one point, though, that I'm only chairing a task team. I'm coordinating efforts that seeks to resolve the matter. But the fact of the matter is that the Department of Public Enterprise is still led by Minister Pravin Gordhan. The Department of Minerals and Energy is still led by Minister Mantashe. The Department of Cooperative Governance is still led by Minister Dlamini Zuma. Now, we are coordinating all the efforts, knowing very well that some of the municipalities are coordinated by COPTA. They're coming on the table, and we're insisting that they must pay. And if our behavior last time was not really helpful, we want to apologize and seek to improve that behavior. But it is in the process where we are trying to facilitate. And I will realize that you've just, out of a stake of problems, we have found a simple target. The Deputy President is chairing the task team. So maybe if I phone the Deputy President, I can have all the answers. And I'm sure in future, I'm committing myself to work with you to resolve these problems. But the fact of the matter is the problem is twofold or threefold. There are problems that are of Eskom nature that affects the internal workings of Eskom. Eskom was losing money itself, where it was supposed to protect the money, so creating a hole. Municipalities were not paying Eskom according to agreed schedules. Even if they have the money, they opt to start paying someone else before considering Eskom. And the debt grew to a point where municipalities are unable. Of course, it's not only municipalities alone. Communities are not paying for services. It is a known fact that there are illegal connections wherever we go. And some of these illegal connections, as members of parliament, we know them as we do our constituency work. But this is energy that is stolen from the grid, which is compounding our problem. But the biggest problem comes where a provincial department don't pay a municipality for services, for water, for electricity that they consume. I find that to be irresponsible. A national department don't pay a municipality for electricity that they've used, for water that they've used. I find that to be irresponsible. According to the task team, these are low-hanging fruits that we should start with. We must commit all government departments, provincial and national, to lead by example. Of course, it is not going to be only, this is a fraction of the problem. I think the biggest problem was with Eskom itself, because Eskom will borrow money, it was just a bottomless pit. Now that there is some work that is happening in Eskom that seeks to change the workings within Eskom, we're all confident that we're in the right direction. But Honorable Shengo, we welcome your support and apologize where you felt not really acknowledged with all the attempts that we're trying to do to solve a problem. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Sithokoze mhlonishwa Sekela Mongameli. Mhlonishwa Mamalinga, umbuzo uzobuya kuwe.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Greetings to the Deputy President. As the economy opened up for alert level 3 and will later open for other alert level of the national lockdown, the demand for electricity supply will increase, leading to increasing load shedding. Load shedding will be made worse by people who continue to interfere, steal, illegally sell electricity and its use without paying for it, causing overloading and tripping of the system. This has led to unfair and wrong accusations being leveled against municipal councillors for the problem of load shedding. Can the Deputy President indicate what measures Eskom will put in place to mitigate the impact of load shedding and prevent criminal attacks against municipal councillors? I thank you, House Chair.
Mhlonishwa Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I think we must say that as we stand now, as things stand, the amount, our generation capacity is at the required level. Load shedding only happens when the demand is more than what we can generate. Then we must start rationing the energy. As we stand now, the available energy in our grid, it's almost 31,000 megawatts. At any given time as a country, we can utilize 29,000 megawatts, 30,000 megawatts. We still have a space, not unless there are unforeseen circumstances that might happen that might push us to utilize the little reserve that we have. I'm saying that does not say I'm ruling out load shedding completely. Why am I not ruling load shedding completely? It's because we are operating plants that are old. Just 2 days on Tuesday, we had an unexpected breakage where we've lost 4 units in Litabo, in Majuba. Now, those are big units that we've lost, and I think we've lost a certain amount of megawatts. Such incidences can disrupt Eskom. But for now, Eskom is going on a planned outage. It can only take certain units out for maintenance, knowing very well that even if they take those units out for maintenance, it won't disrupt the energy on the grid. Our concern, of course, it's illegal connection. Illegal connection, it's a very funny phenomenon because you are taking energy from the grid, you steal this energy, and you have not been accounted for. You have not been counted as the recipient of that energy. So, more and more energy gets taken in the grid to a point where the infrastructure then gets threatened. That is why at a certain point you'll see a generator that will burn because it can't handle the fluctuations. And that will happen in a very localized area where people are connecting and doing all sorts of things. A localized generator can't handle those fluctuations, so that infrastructure can be damaged. If Eskom does not respond timelessly by switching off that infrastructure, it might lose that infrastructure. So this accounts for all the outages that you have seen in Soweto over the past few days. Because that happens between certain peak hours where people are connecting into the grid illegally, overloading the grid, and somewhere Eskom must step in to protect the network. Of course, we'll still have to take a discussion on how best to secure the network, because some of the transformers are getting stolen, electricity is stolen. That means there's a lot of security threats Eskom is exposed to a lot of things. So one thing that we must deal with if we want to get Eskom right is to strengthen security around the infrastructure owned by Eskom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Groenewald will ask the third follow-up question. Honorable
Thank you,
Groenewald.
Honorable House Chair. Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you can continue. We can hear you.
Honorable Deputy President. Honorable Deputy President, with Eskom shifting the burden of load shedding to municipalities that are in arrears, but only supplying the notified maximum demand to such municipalities, like the government Mbeki municipality, what steps are the Deputy President taking to lessen the burden due to illegal connections and ensuring that those ratepayers that pay their accounts diligently, as well as businesses trying to build the economy, especially now in the COVID-19 pandemic period, are not being unfairly penalized due to municipal mismanagement, corruption, theft, fraud, nepotism, and unreasonable price hikes? Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Groenewald. The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It's a fair question because in every municipality we have got people that are honestly honoring their payments. And those people get affected blanketly like the rest. For instance, I've paid my rates and taxes, I've paid my electricity, but because of illegal connections, Eskom then gets to switch off the entire infrastructure. Then I get affected, but I've paid. So these are issues that we are going to take forward as we discussed, but it all boils down to security issues that we must be able to separate those that are paying for their services, those that are stealing, so that they can be arrested, and municipality must ensure that people do pay. And if they pay, municipalities must pay to Eskom. So yes, we are going to try very hard to protect those of our ratepayers who are very honest, who are loyal, who are paying for their services, but there are those that are stealing, connecting illegally and all that, that as government, we must stand up. We cannot allow this lawlessness to proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honorable Deputy President. The last follow-up question will come from the Honorable Maudwe. Honorable Maudwe.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Deputy President, I think you will agree with me that the majority of South Africans, particularly Black people, are struggling to pay for municipal services, property rates, water and electricity. But what is more concerning, Deputy President, is that there's a lot of mismanagement of municipal funds that have been collected through water and electricity, which is never paid over to Eskom and is stolen through blatant inflated tender prices and looting the money which was supposed to have been sent to Eskom. Now, is it not maybe perhaps the time, Deputy President, that we channel the money that is allocated to municipalities to first settle the Eskom debt before sending that money to municipalities? That's one. Two, is it government's intention to privatize Eskom? I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't think we should generalize the problem. Yes, most of our people, especially Black people, don't afford to pay for these services. But there are those of our people that can afford to pay. We've got teachers, we've got policemen and women, we've got nurses, we've got all those people that are staying there, that are earning a salary, that are not paid. So we cannot just put a blanket approach and say our people can't afford to pay. So those that can pay must be made to pay. Now, those that can't pay because they are indigent and whatnot, they are pensioners, I think there will be a different dispensation that will be accorded to them. We accept that. But let us not all hide behind the fact that we can't pay, even if we can. That is to be irresponsible as a citizen. Now, municipalities, some municipalities, yes, there's a lack of discipline because it's not that entirely they don't receive revenue, but you can only use revenue meant for electricity to pay for electricity. You can only use revenue meant for water to pay for water. So you can't be able to rob John and pay Peter every day. So municipalities can't use money collected from water revenue to go and pay electricity. They can't use revenue collected from electricity to go pay water. Somewhere I want to agree with you that our finances are not managed very well. You can see because of the debt, we can't be owing so much money if we've been trying to really manage this debt. So somewhere our municipalities, leadership of our municipalities have dropped the ball. So yes, I agree. But it will be constitutionally incorrect to say if we want to correct this problem, National Treasury should withhold some of the grants, some of the monies that should go directly to municipalities. Remember, municipalities, they don't exist because of a favor that we do for them. They exist because they are a constitutional sphere of government. You can't say, no, do this before I pay you money. You are obliged to pay this money. So that arrangement, I think it will be unconstitutional to withhold some monies from municipalities because they owe certain people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. We now on the last question, which is question number 6, asked to you, Deputy President, by the Honorable Vessels. Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The Honorable Member will be aware that the President established an interministerial committee on land reform and agriculture at the beginning of the current administration. The work of the interministerial committee is to resolve blockages in the acceleration of land reform, as well as ensuring the effective coordination of integrated farmer support, intervention to the sector, as the livelihood of our country. Since the establishment of this IMC, we've been seized with issues of land reform and coordination of agricultural support to farmers. For example, we started experiencing cycle of drought. As government, we implemented in 2019 a package of support to the affected areas affected by the drought. We supported provinces to drill boreholes. We supported provinces to buy feedstock. In areas like KZN, we've made available livestock feed to targeted commercial and smallholder farming. In Limpopo, we've drilled boreholes, supporting more or less 3,563 farmers. Similarly, in the Northwest District of Dr. Ruth Mompati, we have supported farmers through livestock feed to commercial and subsistence farmers. In Mpumalanga, the same, it's livestock feed and the drilling of boreholes. In the Western Cape, we've supported through the supply of fodder that has benefited more than 700 farmers, commercial and smallholder farmers. In the Northern Cape, during our visit with the Honorable Hunewald and Minister Tidiza, an immediate relief fund of 30 million was announced by the minister. A fodder bank was established. The province embarked on a planting of maize and lucerne for fodder supply, and moreover, the extension of irrigation and input costs for fodder production, which benefited almost 8,000 farmers. As we have stated before, this support does not amount to agricultural subsidies, but this is part of our efforts to alleviate the negative impact posed by the drought to farmers and the sustainability of the sector. Government will continue to act as swiftly as possible in responding to challenges faced by farmers and in accompanying effects of climate change. Among other interventions, we'll be able to continuously provide early warning information and drought coping strategies. That is why, considering the impact of persisting drought condition in many parts of the country, on the 4th of March this year, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs declared South Africa a national disaster area. In implementing this decision, the affected provinces were advised and given the necessary allocation, and in response, they needed to present their business plans on how the indicated allocations are going to be utilized. The national lockdown disrupted this process, as movement which could have facilitated engagement with affected farmers was now becoming more and more limited. After the lifting of Alert Level 4, the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development and the Minister of Culture once again requested provinces to act on this matter in order to ensure that affected farmers are duly supported. We expect that the business plan will take into account the diminishing fiscal resources and the negative impact of COVID-19, This calls on government to reprioritize the available resources to respond to the impact of the pandemic. This means that resources may not always match the need on the ground, including on this issue of the drought. However, as government and all the stakeholders in agriculture, we should work together with a common purpose in ensuring that we optimize the usage of our limited resources to sustain this important sector and save the jobs. In the final analysis, the cumulative negative effect of climate change resulting in severe drought and flooding affects all of us, and as such, we have to find common ground and a unifying purpose to unlock the full potential of the agricultural sector presented by, among others, equitable land reform. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Baie dankie, as young president. Achtbare lid wissels, there's no easy date om die vraag te vra.
Dankie, achtbare huisvoorsitter. Honorable Deputy President, I know that you are aware of the devastating effects of the multi-year drought, and as you've mentioned, you visited a lot of those farmers that are facing bankruptcy or have already gone bankrupt. For every commercial farmer that goes bankrupt, there are jobs lost, and it threatens our food security. And with all due respect, Deputy President, boreholes do not solve the problem. Boreholes do not assist in the financial woes of these farmers. Why is it then that since the declaration of the national state of disaster on the 4th of March, none of the 139 million rand allocated to the disaster has been spent? And the money and the interventions that you mentioned, Deputy President, a lot of those money spent on feed and fodder has gone lost because of corruption. And you do know that. You know of the situations in KwaZulu-Natal. You know of the situations in the Free State, where the distributors sold the fodder that should have reached farmers. But the essence of the follow-up question, Deputy President, is it not time to prioritize assistance of commercial farmers who are providing food to more than 70% of South Africans and who are creating jobs in this very difficult time? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. It is in our interest as government to try and support all farmers without really becoming selective. Of course, I get your point that our commercial farmers are putting the food on our table. So you are saying leave the small farmers and support the commercial farmers. In fact, I will say no, assist both. Now, we have received the distribution of the money of the 139 million from the department. The Northern Cape will be given 36 million of that money. I think they're in the process of finalizing the paperwork. Western Cape will be given 25 million. The Eastern Cape will be given 35 million. Limpopo will be given 18.5 million. Mpumalanga will be given 12.5 million. Northwest will be given 8 million, and KZN will be given 4 million. Nothing at this stage for Gauteng province and Free State province. So definitely the money is going to reach those provinces and finally it will reach the farmers, the desired destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Masipa from Honorable Masik.
Thanks, Chair. Deputy President, many provinces such as the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape are still grappling with drought, yet they fail to attract much needed support other than corruption, because the responsible departments are failing in their duties to coordinate the support. Instead, they coordinate corruption. So my question to you, Deputy President, is can you tell this House and the farmers out there that are struggling as to what have you done to hold the executive to account regarding the uncoordinated support from COGTA, Department of Agriculture, Treasury, and Water and Sanitation, so that they become quickly responsive to the plight of our struggling farmers? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Well, I'm going to respond to a practical situation where I met the farmers, that is the Northern Cape. We met the farmers presented their problems. I was with the minister, and there, together with the provincial government, a plan was made. Money was put on the table. 30 million was put on the table to provide fodder and that. Now, the Premier there requested us to say, we've been applying that the province should be declared a disaster area. Can we be assisted? And definitely when I left there, I presented the case to Minister Dlamini Zuma, and she took up this matter, and there we are. A national state of disaster was declared, and this 139 million was made available. Remember, the benefit of declaring a state of disaster is not only because you'll receive money, but it says something about the money you owe as a farmer, the kind of debt you hold with the bank, because that can be renegotiated because there is an understanding that there is a disaster. So in a disaster situation, conditions get relaxed. So with the Northern Cape, I'm proud and happy in the manner the Premier handled the process and working together with the farmers. And in addition to the situation in the Northern Cape, the Department of Agriculture allocated its land to the department, to the government of the Northern Cape, so that they can grow fodder to assist farmers. Some of the farmers were relocated next to the Orange River. So there's been a lot of work that has been done to try and rescue some farmers that were dying. Of course, I don't rule out corruption in areas where corruption has been noted. I would be happy for the honorable member, because when we're in this house, if we talk about corruption, we must come close to presenting the evidence of that corruption. My office is available. I want to follow up on these issues of corruption so that we can root it out. It is our responsibility, all of us, to root out corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Deputy President, in respect of agricultural support, you will agree with me that firstly, as a result of the drought, and now very importantly, as a result of COVID-19, we are going to have an increase in unemployment. The poverty, there's going to be a rise or increase in the level of poverty in South Africa. Now, if you take many of the areas, and I want to give you some examples, Deputy President, Sitsikama, Woodlands, Storms Rivier, and all those areas which has fertile soil, beautiful land with water and all the resources, will you consider as the leader of government business together with the relevant departments, rural development, agriculture, to be able to put in place some mechanisms to identify unemployed people in these areas that you can make into successful potential farmers, not only in the agricultural sector, but also in the fishing industry? Now, what they find is, and what they're looking for, and like you've always alluded to, the ANC is a caring government. Now, those people are looking for this caring government to come and care for them and lift them up and change their lives for the better, reducing the unemployment, but also developing these rural areas into semi-urban areas. Thank you, Deputy President.
Please give.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, thank you very much.
You can continue, Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Let me welcome the suggestions. We are going to take this suggestion to the IMC. Of course, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development sits in the IMC so that we can pursue some of the suggestions. We are going to invite the Minister of Forestry and Fisheries, Minister Barbara Chrissy, to try and explore some of these options that you are proposing. Of course, we are mindful that post-COVID-19 is going to be a very difficult period. We are ready to face this period. We're going to be creative. We're ready in the IMC to do everything in our power to get our people back into tilling the land. Thank you very much.
Siyathokoza. Umbuzo wokugcina. Inkosi Zwelivelile Mandela. Ithuba ngelakho baba.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Deputy President, the drought-stricken areas have exacerbated the plight of the rural small-scale farmers and hampered their potential to grow and develop their farming activities into viable commercial agricultural enterprises. What are the most pressing considerations that the Interministerial Committee is looking at in terms of availing the much-needed support to small-scale farmers devastated by the impact of drought? And secondly, how will coordination at the level of the IMC ensure the speedy allocation of water licenses to small-scale farmers, particularly in deep rural areas? I thank you.
With
that question.
Thank you very much. Well, the last matter by the honorable member, Inkosi. We are going to consider this matter in our next agenda item of the IMC. This matter of providing water licenses to small farmers. It's a matter that we are going to debate, but not only to small farmers, but to farmers generally. Because there are farmers that are farming, they're battling, they don't have these licenses. So we're going to review the entire situation. But of course, you can talk of giving out these water licenses, but we are faced with a big problem of a drought. That means you don't have a water source. So uppermost in the minds of the IMC is to expand our sources of water. We are looking forward to a point where we are going to request the president to prioritize the building in this infrastructure build program that we are talking about. We're going to request the president to prioritize the building of 2 or 3 dams, because by doing so, we'll be investing into our growth as a country. Water, it's a very important commodity. It's the same as electricity. So the more we invest in this resource, water, the more we are sustaining our future as a country. So we are of the view that we must expand the source as much as we must protect the existing sources. Very worried, though, about some of our rivers that are getting contaminated, polluted by our actions. The Vaal River is a case in point that gets polluted by 18 municipalities, right from Mpumalanga, Gauteng, Free State, Northern Cape, before it goes into the sea. Very worried about the condition of our water. It's a matter that we're going to address. But definitely, yes, the question of water licenses is going to be looked at. And we will be in a position to report progress. Thank you very much.
Re a leboga motlatsa mopresidente. So ke bofelo ba dipotso tsotlhe tse ne di botsitswe motlatsa presidente le mosebetsi wa rena wa letsatsi o fitlhile bofelong. Re a leboga. The house is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.